Hello and welcome back to another video. So, since I've been on Linux and especially since I am publishing Linux related videos and I'm more active on some forums talking about Linux, I have received many comments that made me think, which really started to grind the gears inside here. So in today's episode I wanted to discuss my responses or answers to this kind of comments that I've received on both the video sharing platforms where I publish my videos such as YouTube and Library, and both on other platforms where I happened to get into a discussion about Linux. And so none of these is intended to be a mockery of the original poster with whom I am going to argue here. I actually thank everyone who presents their honest opinion to me, and I can give my honest opinion back. And so this time I am making a video about this because I was thinking that maybe not everyone is finding all these comments, so they are spread out in different places, and it's maybe a better idea to share my answers here where everyone who is interested can get an insight into what I think. And so before I get into it, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. I am only 4 subscribers far from the 500, which I put at myself as kind of the next step. A lot of these subscribers came from DistroTube after he was good guy enough to share my critical video of him on his channel. So DT luckily got it that disagreement doesn't mean disrespect, or we can disagree as while not being enemies or something like that. And so he did not take it as a personal attack, luckily, and a lot of people found my channel, but that momentum has disappeared, and nowadays for every new subscriber I lose one. So if you haven't done so, subscribe to this channel for new content that is going to come, and a lot of exciting things are going to come. And if you are watching on Odyssey or Library or whichever platform of the library system you are using, you should subscribe. I need 20 more to reach 100 followers there. So if you are following me on Library, double so, or 4 times, or actually it's like 5 times because it's 4 and this is 20, so it's 5 times more. Pretty please follow my channel. And now that's out of the way, let's get into the comments. So this one is actually not just one comment. I got into a kind of a lengthy argument with this one person on one of the forums I was active on. And basically their first initial comment was that Linux is a good operating system for a few things and is a very good operating system for those few things, but 99% what people do on their computers, it's just not a good choice to do it on Linux, so no one should suggest Linux for regular users because they just will run into troubles. And of course, when I started to arguing with this person that, well, actually, if you can usually find very good open source and free software alternatives for all the things that you are doing on your computer. So you should not just think about, can I use the same programs that I have been using on Mac, on Windows, on Linux? What you should be thinking about is, can I do these things that I am doing on Windows and Mac OS? Can I do those on Linux? And my feeling is that probably 99% of the people who are just using, and I'm talking about like a personal computer that you use at home for your personal needs, I would think that 99% of the computer users would be sufficiently satisfied with the software Linux offers. And to this answer, he said, or this person said, that if you choose Linux, you have to limit yourself to a very narrow array of programs that you can use. And well, I didn't do that, but maybe I should have, just to show this list of applications page for Arch Linux, which, well, if you think that it is a very, very narrow limitation, then let's just go for podcast clients. You have a few graphical and a few console applications. You have Usenet, newsreaders, you have many things, blog engines, a lot of things are available on Linux actually. Let's just, like web browsers, how many web browsers are available? How many multimedia applications, vector graphics editors are available? So I wouldn't say that you are putting yourself in like a position where you limit yourself. Well, you cannot use all the same programs that you can use on the Windows or the macOS platforms, but that saying that it's a very narrow array of programs, it's kind of it's not true. It is coming from someone who never really looked these things up, never really tried. Okay, and then when I replied, then the next message was that everybody uses Windows anyways, so you cannot escape, like especially if you are in like a business environment. The small business servers, they just run Windows. There is nothing you can do about it. The computers that come with industrial machines, they all run Windows, so you just give up Linux. It's like totally useless. And you know, even if this is true, like if every small business is just forced to use Windows servers because there is just no way that you can set up the same functionality on Linux servers, that it doesn't mean anything for your home usage. So even if every business everywhere in the world runs Windows, that wouldn't mean anything for your home computer where you do your home stuff. And just that, because a lot of people use Windows servers, that doesn't mean that Windows servers are the best. So, you know, there are big companies out there who are providing Linux servers and are providing sometimes even like a much better customer service than what Microsoft does with their Windows servers. It's of course, Microsoft is like a very big, $1 billion company, one of the biggest companies on the American Stock Exchange, so they have a lot of resources to push their products via marketing. They don't have to actually make the best products to have the biggest market share. And when it comes to industrial machines, I have experience with that. Well, not industrial machines, my experience is with laboratory equipment from both the industry and from both universities. And you know, a lot of times the problem is that when you buy this industrial equipment or buy this lab equipment, so these are very expensive stuff. So these are usually could be like their cost could be measured in like multiples of high-end cars, some equipment is cost like, you know, like a good Audi car, and some cost like 3 Audi cars. So these are not cheap stuff, and usually these companies buy these equipment for not just like 4 years, 5 years, they buy it for 10 years or 20 years, and some of these can last even longer. So once you purchase it with a computer, and in the last 30 years they usually come with a computer, so you have like a separate PC connected to this machine to control it, and those computers do come with Windows, and this is how you end up with Windows 2000 and Windows XP still running on many computers in the industry, because the company who produced that industrial machine did care about developing that software exactly until the point they sold you that software with the machine itself, and after that they don't care. That machine only works with the software that only works with Windows XP, so you end up with like 10 Windows XP computers in your laboratories, and now people are just, you know, transmitting the same 20-year-old viruses back and forth between them and stuff like that on their USB drives. And the best thing is that now the new machines are still coming out with Windows, and they are of course coming out with Windows 10 nowadays, but the thing is, I've seen an equipment where the computer comes with a software that basically just obfuscates Windows, so the user never sees the underlying operating system. So it's not like, you should use Windows because people only know how to copy and paste files to a USB drive in Windows or something like that. They use Windows and they just hide Windows away behind the software for the machine. And the smart choice is to, because Windows can get a lot of viruses, the smart choice is to avoid that is, you are not allowed to use a USB stick in that computer. This computer is not allowed to be connected to the network. So once you finish your measurements, you should burn your data to CD or DVD ROMs, because that way you cannot infect the computer with the virus that has been spreading on all the Windows XP machines through the USB drives. So just the fact that Windows is used and closed source proprietary software are used in this environment, it doesn't mean it's a good choice. It doesn't mean this choice makes sense. This choice only makes sense for a company who just tries to sell you a new machine every 10 years, even though you can use their machines after 20 years. So let's go to the next point, which was the market share of Windows on servers is increasing. So even if we are saying that, all these business applications, the servers could be just well as run under Linux, it's just not happening. Windows is just taking over. And then, of course, the biggest stab was that the Linux desktop penetration is only 2%, LOL, so you are irrelevant. Well, I personally might be irrelevant because, as I just showed you, I have a YouTube channel with less than 500 subscribers, hopefully not so long, but so I am definitely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but 2% market share on all desktop computers is actually a lot of people, and it's enough people to have people who develop software for it. It's enough people to have a vibrant community who develops software for Linux and who develops Linux itself. So I think we shouldn't be obsessed with increasing this number to 3 or 5 or 4%. It doesn't really matter. We already have enough people. We should be more adamant about spreading the open source and free software philosophy, and after people get on board, they will naturally switch to the free operating systems, one of them which is Linux. Okay, so let's go to the next. And this was also on some forum. I just copied. It was not a long post, which I want to reply to. Is the title was just "Give me reasons to switch to Linux." It just sounds like, when someone really wants to hit you, but they don't want to hit first, so they just tell you like, "Give me a reason and I will hit you," something like that. Anyway, so of course, if you want to switch to Linux, the reasons should be the reasons that you have. For me, of course, it was the free software and the philosophy of open source and stuff like that. And so, but anyways, this person is asking for some advice, and this person tells us that they have a super high-end PC. They don't plan to play games anymore, so but I need to run my AAA games kind of objection to Linux doesn't play here. I want to focus on programming. Yeah, that's okay. So we know what you have a good computer and you want to do programming. What else do we know? So you have 2 monitors and they have different kind of DPI. So okay, that's an important thing because not all desktop environment handle mismatch in DPI between monitors equally. So this is a good. So if you want to know about like what programs should I use under Linux, then yeah. This is a kind of important information. And then it's like, I'm afraid of driver support. Yeah, this is also a reasonable thing to say. So what reasons can we tell this person to switch to Linux? Well, after we kind of debunked the problems with the previous comment, I would say that, well, you can do probably everything on Linux that you want to do, that you could do on Windows. You will have even more choice. So in the previous commenter said that you are limited to much narrower choice of applications. But well, in Linux you can actually run multiple different desktop environment, while on Windows you are stuck with whatever Microsoft has put in front of you, and if you are lucky you can change the colors on it, but only if you purchase the full version, of course. On Linux you can choose between many desktop environments, and of course you should choose one that will help you handle these two monitors properly. But if you are afraid of the driver support, whether it will be adequate or not, maybe you should give us a more detailed description of what exactly your super high-end PC is. And well, if you want to have some recommendations on what programs we'll be able to use for programming, maybe you should give us a better description of what programming languages you use. So this is kind of the what happens when someone first thinks about Linux and they don't really know how to approach these things, because most of the hardware manufacturers and also those proprietary companies making all these software development kits and stuff like that, they of course focus on Windows because Microsoft, and they have good deals with Microsoft, I guess. So when a Windows user first comes to Linux, it is a very difficult concept to understand that, yeah, you might have to consider whether your hardware or software needs will be met on Linux, and if not, what can you do to mitigate those things. But so first you should learn how to ask exact questions and you have to kind of get used to the thought that you have to give very good details. So you have to kind of get into the mindset, like, if I wanted to help this person, what would I need to ask them? And you should be able to think like what are to provide answers to those questions before those questions are asked, because the more and more people come to Linux and will have to be asked these questions, people will just have less and less patience. Okay, so for third one is something that I really owe Dennis Holman this shout out. He asked me in a comment to just tell my viewers what happened to him, and I'm terribly sorry, because we're like more than a week late now with this. And so what happened is that unfortunately Dennis got into a kind of a situation with nature, and so Dennis has been one of my first subscribers on this channel. He has been with me since I had like my first 30 or 40 subscribers, so I think I owe him this shout out. So you can see that he kinda is in a bad place, so please, if you can do so, just go to his YouTube channel. You can find it in the description. It's Life, Home and My Linux Journeys, and you can just wish him his best, and maybe you can ask him if you can help him or something like that. And we all here on the Nice Macro channel, we wish Dennis the best, and hopefully he will be able to get back to his normal life soon after this horrible disaster. And so from this more somber note, let's get back into something more lighthearted. And so this is, I gave this title to this comment as repositories are stupid, so this is my title. And what is interesting about this comment is that this commenter is telling us that it baffles them that the free Linux community really believes it to be a great idea that software other than the operating system packages themselves should be offered and maintained through distro-specific repositories by the distro developers. It's unbelievably ironic that the frowned upon Windows and Android offer more freedom and ease for developers with their .exe and .apk formats. So I like this comment, even though I almost like have a 180 degrees view on this, but I really appreciate where this person is coming from. So you want to use some random software that is not free software, that is a proprietary software, you have a high chance that you will be able to run that proprietary software well, more easily on a Windows system than on Linux, because on Windows you can just run the setup.exe and it will just install the program to your computer and it will run, while on Linux maybe, you know, this program have been only compiled for certain distribution, and other distributions which have different versions of their dependencies in their repositories, it won't work. So it is much easier for a proprietary company to package software for Windows and Android than for Linux, and this is considered more freedom and ease. But the thing is, when we talk about the free Linux, or just in general, this is referring to the free software philosophy. Well, in free software, the freedom is not reserved for the developers, the freedom is reserved for the users. So it is the users who should be able to free to run on their computer whatever they want, and so they know what their computer does, so their computer works for them. And well, of course, not everyone can check every program ever wrote that they want to, or to see whether they want to use it or not. And this is why we have the middleman, or the middle person. I don't know what is the politically correct version for middleman. My English knowledge is not that good. Anyway, so the middle person, the distro specific maintainers, will be the ones who will take a look. And for that, I suggest you to read this Maintainers Matter article, which was written by someone who has actually maintained packages for Arch Linux. And so this opinion piece is something that was really influential on me when I read this. So it's like, why is it a good idea that we don't just let people write any software and just let people install that on their computer? Why do we want not just these independent software vendors to have direct access to the users' computers? Why do we want the repository maintainers to be between them? And this is kind of what is all these you know, the distro agnostic or universal package formats like snap packages and whatever AppImage, those kind of things are for, so that, you know, the independent software developers can package their stuff. And boo-hoo, it is very difficult for software developers to package for all the different distributions, and what a bad world we live in Linux. But of course, this is not their job. So based on this article, if you read it, I won't read it for you because it's quite long. You can use a text-to-speech engine if you don't want to read this long. I don't want to play that role. There are very good software for that. But basically what this article is saying is that we have the maintainers because we want to make sure that the users of our operating systems get programs that actually do what they say they do. So you as the user don't have to check the source code by yourself. You select a distribution where you can trust the repository maintainers that they do these checks for themselves and maybe remove unwanted functionality, or will just say, okay, this software is so badly written, we just don't want it in our repositories, we just don't want the users of our distributions to get this software, and just it will just freeze on them and it will just delete their data accidentally and things like that. So this is kind of giving some of our trust to some people who can keep the software developers in check. And I quite kind of like this idea. It of course requires additional manpower, and it requires you to choose a distribution which has enough manpower for that. And so this next comment is about that, because this person runs Void Linux and half the programs want to use aren't available, and even after requesting them, after 3 years haven't been added to the repositories, and how good it is that AppImage can be run on his system. And well, this is that kind of problem, that if we have a distribution which only has a few maintainers for its repositories, then there's nothing we can do. Then there won't be enough software in these repositories. So when you are choosing a distribution, you should choose based on these based on this information, and maybe don't just make a new distribution by yourself, but maybe, you know, try to contribute to one that is the closest to your personal ideals. Maybe you can make some personalized or customized desktop environments for that distribution, things like that if you want to, but it's a better idea to not start a new distribution with a low number of developers, because then you will run into this very bad issue of software not being available. Okay, this next one is more of a closer to home, because it's specifically Arch Linux related, and it was about installing Arch Linux via Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V. So copy and paste, installing was okay, copy and paste almost, had to pay a little attention there. Well, I don't know about that. I think we have to pay a lot of attention when installing. But anyways, got stuck after that, lots of reading, no progress, and had to switch back to Ubuntu to do the work by tomorrow. I believe those tech-savvy, it's easy, just read, very well documented, you just need to read and follow along. Yeah, not really. Yeah, this is true. So this is true, it's not really how it works. So I like this comment because it really highlights some problems with the perception of Arch Linux. So I talked about this in previous videos, but basically there are two very different approaches when talking about Arch Linux. One kind of the people will tell you that you shouldn't try Arch Linux because it's super difficult, and there is the other group who would say that, oh, those people who use Arch Linux, they think they are so much smarter than us just because they could install Arch Linux. Well, it's not that difficult to install Arch Linux, so they are not that much smarter than us. So these are the kind of the two different perceptions of Arch Linux. And well, none of them is actually true. So installing Arch Linux is not easy, but it's not impossible. The thing is that if you just Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V copying the commands, you shouldn't be doing it. And if you need to use your computer the next day and you have not installed Arch Linux previously, you shouldn't do that. So install it in a virtual machine, see how things work there, install it on a USB drive. You can, if you are using like a virtual box and you installed your installed Arch Linux successfully in a virtual machine, on VirtualBox it is relatively easy to just copy your installation to a USB drive. I have a tutorial on that already, but it is also, you can just have by 2 USB drives, just write just copy the installer, the live image to that USB drive, and then install from that to the other USB drive, and in that way you can test out your hardware compatibility things without actually nuking your Ubuntu install. So once you figure that out, and once your USB drive installation works properly, then you can go and install it on your computer, and that time you will probably not encounter like big issues anymore, and you will be able to use your computer and pick up your stuff right where you left with Ubuntu. And so don't just believe that those people say it's just easy and you can just read and follow along, because if it was that easy that you can just copy and paste, then we would probably didn't have this installation process. We would just have one command, which is a script, and which would just run all the commands in sequence. But this connects to our next comment here, which is basically unnecessary work, is the title I gave to this, and this was basically unnecessary work right from the installer, in my opinion. So It is also arguing that copying, pasting, and commands while tinkering with Arch really is learning. Well, it's not really. So it's not really. The part of learning is not when you go to the installation guide and just you know, Control C, Control V, all these commands to your virtual machine or something like that. Learning is because you just take a look at this. Okay, so this is the default key map is US, and a lot of people who use Arch don't live in the United States, so they need to find their own key maps. And you know, you can use this command and Control C, Control V it, and then use the load keys commands. Or, you know, you can just click on this link and then click on this link and read what exactly is the console key map. You can read what exactly the load keys command does. You can see, you know, what the fonts, if you maybe want to use different font and stuff like that. You can just read through these, and of course, if you are too lazy for that, you can watch my video when I do this for you and follow these links and comment on them and try to explain what exactly these comments do. So that is the part where you can use Arch Linux for learning. It's not just when you Control C and Control V the commands. And of course, the other part of this is this really unnecessary work. I mean, if you are not in the US, you are not used to the American keyboard layout, so you want to change your keyboard layout to one that you are used to. You need to know if you are really working in the EFI mode or not. You need to connect to your specific internet, you know, the internet in your specific situation, which is different for everyone. Someone has wireless, someone has wired connection, someone has, I don't know, some weird setups. So you should know what kind of things you need to do to connect to the internet. Okay, this one, update the system clock. Well, yeah, sure. That's Control C, Control V. Partitioning the disk. You have to think about what kind of partitioning setup do you want to use. Do you have multiple disks? Do you have only one disk? Do you want a separate home directory? Are you preparing to have a dual boot with maybe another Linux distribution? Do you want the swap drive or a swap partition? Do you want a boot partition? Do you want an EFI partition? And what kind of file systems you want to use? These things are all things that you should consider for yourself. So these are not just you know, you just have to, because the Arch Linux developers are some kind of sadists, and they want their users to just type a lot while installing the system, just give you all these things you need to type, and they don't write a script that does it for you. Yeah, because you have to customize your system. That's what it's all about. You should set up your system the way you want, and you should know what you want by reading through all the documentation and learning about it. So yeah, sure, just the installation in itself is not learning, but it encourages you to learn, because to exactly find out how you want to set up your computer, you should read through all these things. And this is why it is really frowned upon in the Arch Linux forum if you just blindly follow a YouTube guide. So they don't like it, because the YouTube guide will just present you like one kind of installation, and maybe it's not really the way of like the kind of setup that your case is better for your case. So yeah, that's it. And the other parts of the comments I didn't really want to address, but anyways, I just copied it here so you can read it through if you want to. So this is the end of our presentation for today, and I hope that those people who actually watched this video and found that I addressed their comments don't feel offended. My goal was not to offend or make fun of anyone. I hope I succeeded with that. I just wanted to give my honest opinions and kind of counterpoints to these things, because let's face it, people who use Linux are very, very different types of people, and it is true that Arch Linux is not for everyone. Linux is not for everyone. There are people who just, you know, have different philosophies, different priorities, and there is nothing, we shouldn't do anything about them, but I think it is a good idea to put our own thoughts about it, our own experiences, because especially people who never really use Linux and they just parrot something that they read on a forum about like how restrictive Linux is and how difficult it is to find any program that you can use on Linux. We have to dispel those kind of myths, because I think actually Linux would be an appropriate operating system for much more people than how many people are actually using it. But you know, we have to educate people instead of just forcing them to switch to Linux. That doesn't make any sense. And all about the other comments about how Linux and Arch Linux works and is it stupid to have repositories or not? Well, if you just trust every software developer out there, or you just don't care because maybe you know you don't care if they steal your data, if they run Bitcoin miners on your computer, or you have like enough capacity for yourself to check every program that you run if it's malicious or not, then you know, of course maybe you don't care that much about the distribution maintainer, so you think that their work is not important. But maybe you think like me and you think that it is a good idea to have some unrelated party checking the work of these independent software developers before they let you easily install it. Because let's face it, installing something from a repository is nothing more than just a convenience, because basically, yeah, it's Linux, it's free software. Any free software you can install it on Linux. If you know how to compile stuff, you can do that. The Arch user repository has a lot of unsupported packages, so you can basically install many things on your computer without the repository maintainers having any say in that, so you always have that choice. And of course you can go with the universal package managers, or like Snap or Flatpak, or you can just use the app image if you prefer that way. There are many ways to do things on Linux, luckily, so we can all choose the ways that fit our own needs, and we can discuss why we chose the way we do things, why we prefer the way we do things instead of the other way. And maybe, you know, someone was doing something in a different way because they didn't have enough information. So I think I've been talking long enough about these things, and if you listen to this whole rant, then I really respect you and thank you for staying with me. And maybe you should subscribe to this channel for more Arch Linux, Linux and free software related content. There are some interesting things coming down the pipes. If you want to be in a next video, you can leave a very controversial comment down below, which will really make me think and which will really make me want to address your comment. And I hope if I addressed your comment, you don't take it in the wrong way. I hope that you find this video helpful, and maybe we will understand each other better the next time we have an interaction. And give me a thumbs up or like this video if you enjoyed this content. Even though you didn't agree with everything I said, you can still enjoy it, hopefully. And well, as just as I said, leave a comment down below and let's argue about Linux. I think it's a very interesting topics around that. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.